Hi, my name is Maria Yakimchuck, and I am a transformational EFT coach for moms. I'm so excited to share today on Conversation with Pearl.
Hey everybody, it's Pearl again. Welcome back to another episode of Conversations with Pearl. And I am in a different spot. If you follow us, you know my background doesn't look like this, but I do love wine, which is behind me. And I am actually at my coach's house, Julie DeLuca Collins, and she has a podcast too called Casa de Confidence. And so I've been up here for about a week and it's snowing outside. So it's really crazy for this Tampa girl. But I am so excited to be on the show today with you today from Connecticut because I've got a great guest for you. And if you are somebody who has had a child, is expecting a child, or knows somebody that is, you're going to want to invite them to listen to this podcast with you. And if they're not with you, remember, you can always go and save it and let them know later on to watch it. But our guest today is Maria Yakimchuck. She is a certified transformational coach who helps moms heal from postpartum depression and anxiety without the use of medication. And you guys know me, I love anything we can do naturally is such a benefit for our bodies. And so with her unique coaching approach that blends EFT tapping, self-compassion work, and deep knowledge of maternal mental health, she helps those moms heal from their own childhood traumas and break free from dysfunctional familial patterns and eliminate the shame and the guilt so they can thrive in motherhood and create that new healthy living for family norms for themselves and their children. So Maria, welcome to the show. So excited to have you today.
Oh, thank you, Pearl. I'm very excited to be here with you today, too.
So tell us, where are you coming in from?
I'm coming in from Chicago. I'm in one of the suburbs a little bit north of Chicago in Winnetka. It's tiny.
So you're used to this weather, the snow and the rain that we're getting here today.
Yeah, we had a little bit of snow yesterday, but it was like the perfect amount where we were able to go out, do a little bit of like sledding for the kids, but it didn't impact any driving or roads. So it's like the perfect amount of snow.
That is so awesome. Well, I'm excited to have you here today. And, you know, I am a mom of two amazing young men, my forever son, Matt, who's 25, and my youngest son, Nate, who's 23. And as a mom who struggled to have children, we did 10 years of different kinds of infertility, fibroid. I had surgeries for fibroid tumors and just all that stuff that comes with trying to have a family. When you reached out and shared about wanting to come on and share, I was like, oh my gosh, I am so excited to have you because I do know that even as I was trying to have a family, my husband is the oldest of all his cousins and all of them were getting married and they were having families right away with no problems at all. And for me, there was a lot of trauma there, you know, the thought of why me, you know, and then if I would read in a paper that somebody's dropped a child in the trash or something, before we had the safe spaces for the firehouses, I really struggled with that. And, you know, and the postpartum, I didn't even know what it was when I had my son, Nate, over 23 years ago. So I am so excited to have you today. So share with us your story. Like, what brought you to bring in this amazing gift you have forward?
Oh, yeah, thank you. So I have a master's degree in psychology and my specialty was in marriage and family therapy. And that was, before I had kids, that was what I was working on. I primarily worked with families with young children, with children with special needs like autism and ADHD were primarily my clients. And then, I became a mom myself. And I experienced what it was like to become a mom. And for me, it was a very, very difficult transition. The pregnancy was fine, but I was one of the women who started to develop their depression in pregnancy. So it probably towards the end of my first trimester. It didn't even take that long for this to start setting in and me just feeling sad and down about, a child that we planned for and we were very excited to have. But it just, my mood started going down. But even though my sons aren't very old, my eldest is going to be 7, my OBs weren't talking to me about watching out for postpartum depression. And even though with a psychology background, I knew about it, it's very easy to convince yourself that you're not experiencing it while you're experiencing it. So I was kind of pushing it away. And then I had, I had my son and it was kind of a traumatic birth. We ended up with having a C-section, even though so we planned to have an all natural birth in a birthing center. And, that all came crashing down when we found out that he apparently turned breech in labor. Very unusual, very unprepared for. And then that sort of cascaded with it feeling like a very traumatic birth. And because of all the, drugs that you have to take for pain relief, I felt really disconnected from him. And so my postpartum depression just, grew and grew. I didn't feel bonded to him. I didn't feel good transitioning to being a mom. It didn't feel real. It didn't feel like something I wanted to do. It just felt so traumatizing. And I just was, suffocating and feeling like I was being smothered by my life. And, I was trying to address it on my own, but mostly I was denying that I had any help. That I had any depression. So I refused help, refused to go see anybody, sort of started coming out of it. And then I got pregnant with my second. And I was, because I had this really hard experience, I was very scared that my second pregnancy was going to be just as bad mentally, and the postpartum was going to be just as bad. Luckily, I didn't have postpartum depression with him, didn't have it during pregnancy, didn't have it postpartum either. I had a successful VBAC, everything was great. I started developing postpartum depression later because he was a bad sleeper, which is not very, not very easy to get through, and very common for postpartum depression to set in after, a few months because you're lacking in sleep. And then as they were growing, I just realized I kind of got out of this acute depression, but there's still this something lingering. And I just always was sad and unhappy in being a mom. Just it didn't jive with me. And I tried going back to my old therapist. I tried doing coaching. I tried doing some sort of self-care work with, exercises and coaching booklets and everything. It just, nothing could truly get me out of it. And then I came across EFT. And I was like, you know what? I am so desperate. This sounds great. Why don't I try it? So I decided to buy this course and try it out. And the beginning of the course is you're working on healing yourself before you're moving on to helping others. And as I started working through the course, I'm like, oh my God, not only is this working, I'm feeling better. I'm getting to the root cause of what has caused me all this pain. And then I'm able to clear it out. And so when I noticed that happen, and I noticed I started healing, it just gave me even more reason to share this with people, because it's not I'm promoting something that I don't know it works. I know it works. It worked for me. It worked not only for mental health issue, but also for physical health issues. And so, I just discovered this, and combining that with self-compassion has really been helping me to heal and grow.
Wow, what a story. I didn't realize it. And because we just don't talk about it, I feel too, that you can develop that depression while you're pregnant, right?
Yeah.
That's so, here we are thinking, oh, it's such a beautiful thing. We're having this child, and maybe you have or haven't been trying for so long. And then, wow, that feeling of, why do I feel so unhappy, or why do I feel so depressed? I just can't imagine being in that space and trying to work through that. And then, like you said, to have to go, and I knew when I was having my son Nate because we had our oldest, we adopted, so he was born of our heart, and our youngest one we had through in vitro. And there was a little bit of depression there before, as we were leading up to the in vitro, because when they retrieved our eggs, we only had 3 eggs. So we thought, oh, it's not going to work, it's not going to happen. And then we realized that when it did work, I was like, okay, that was a blessing, right? But when you talk about that, I was so happy. But when you share that, I was like, gosh, I just can't imagine that space, because I do know that there was that depression of, like I shared earlier, about not being able to have a child, and then we were so blessed when we got the call to adopt Matthew. And so and I share that story that no matter what, whether you have a child, if you're trying to have children and it's not working, to make sure you share with all your family and friends. And that's what we did. But I can't imagine being that space, going in and thinking I'm going to have this child naturally. And because I had fibroid tumors, I knew going in it was going to be a C-section. But, all of that and that panic, especially when you're going through, already walking through depression and all that come on, I just, I want to ask you, I want to I want to talk about the EFT that you're doing as well. But when you were going through that, like you were finding that there wasn't a lot of help out there for you. Is that right?
Yeah, there wasn't nobody, like I never had my midwives, because I transferred from an OB practice to a midwife practice because we were going with the birth center. Even they didn't really check in on me. They checked in a little bit, but I also noticed that I'm one of those people who is the perfect patient. So when they come in, I present happy and blissful and amazing, and everybody, that's how I always present in life outwardly. I think it's my personal mask to protect myself. So everyone has always viewed me as having this perfect, amazing life. And so nobody really caught on. And, I don't think my husband really caught on either. And even me, I didn't quite catch on, because when you're pregnant, it's really hard to understand. Is it just, hormones are fluctuating? And, we expect that, pregnant women are really hormonal. Their moods are up and down. So it's like, oh, maybe it's just, just pregnancy hormones. It's really easy to excuse that it's, it's not supposed to be like that. And then, now just juxtaposing it against my second pregnancy, which wasn't like that. Now, looking back, I'm like, well, if this was my second pregnancy, I would have known something was wrong, that this isn't how you experience pregnancy. But it being my first, I had no idea, because true, nobody talks about, despite the fact that 50% of postpartum depression cases start in pregnancy. But we still don't talk about it. We don't diagnose, because, even therapists are scared to give a diagnosis during pregnancy, because it's like, well, what if it's just hormones? And the truth is, postpartum depression, a lot of it, and in general, perinatal depression, a lot of it is hormones. They do contribute, but it contributes in people and in women who have had some sort of history of trauma or hardships in their life. And so a lot of the times, this is the first time we're able to diagnose them with it, because it's the first episode of this coming out. Because, when you're having kids, you're just so vulnerable that all your traumas come out, all your defenses come down. Because before, you could have been pretty put together, at least looked put together. You were high functioning. You were able to hide it. Now with the baby, everything's out. All your resources go to them, so you can't hide yourself anymore. So that's a lot of the times why this is our first time we're able to diagnose women with depression.
Well, I want to talk. That's just what you said was we bring up conversations I've had this weekend with Julie and one of my clients, Anne Marie. We were talking about how, we put on, and this is what I talk about too with coaching in our Shero League, is we talk about, putting your cape on first and showing up for yourself first. And what you said too is, we put this face on. We come out, we go, oh, everything's fine. We go to our doctor, everything's fine, and all that. And it's so powerful that we as women, that's what we go to, right? Well, we don't want everybody to think that something's wrong with us, but we have to create that space to be like, it's okay to be vulnerable. Like my son passed away last July, and I've been in grocery stores. I was standing, I think I've showed the story on my podcast before. I was standing in a grocery store waiting behind a deli to get some ham or something. And I just started crying. And he's like, are you okay? Did I do something wrong? And I'm like, no, no, no. And I just feel like, I have to allow the waves to come, because that's also my way of healing myself. And there's nothing wrong with crying. And there's nothing wrong with telling a doctor, this is how I'm feeling. In fact, I had my first doctor's appointment since my son died last month. And I went in, and like, he asked me how I was doing. I was just like, started crying. I'm like, oh, and he's like, oh my gosh, I didn't know. And it's funny, which I thought that was interesting too, because my husband sees his wife and I see the husband in the practice. So, but that communication, how they keep everything sacred. And so you bring that up, that we don't share that. We don't be honest with not just ourselves, but when have professionals ask us how we are, like, we're so afraid to be vulnerable. And it's so important to be vulnerable, because we have to do that. It's part of our healing and taking care of ourselves. But B, it's also a great example, if you have older children, to your spouse, whoever you're around, to say, share with me what's on your mind, because I'm here to help. I'm here to listen. I've told my friends, they'll go, I don't know what to say. I'm like, that's the best thing you could say to me, and sometimes I'll cry and yell and scream, but I just think I'm glad you share that, because it's important. And if you're listening, and when your doctor does ask, don't be afraid to share how you feel, because it's a safe space for you to do that. And so I just love that. So Maria, tell me about the EFT, and so you were looking for help, and you're trying, and then this amazing thing. And I'm familiar with EFT, this tapping and everything comes across to you. Like, as you started going through the process, what were some of the changes that you saw as you started healing yourself?
Yeah, so it was, I'll tell you, it's a long process, even though EFT speeds a lot of the stuff up. The amount that I was able to accomplish with EFT in 1 year was more than I've ever managed to accomplish in a year of therapy. I will tell you that alone. And I will tell you that as being a therapist, while therapy is amazing, it does work. EFT speeds up the process tenfold. And the process of doing it was difficult because in reality, to heal, whether it's through therapy, whether it's through EFT, you have to get really honest with yourself. You have to get really up close and personal with your wounds. And they're usually the ones from childhood, and they feel very vulnerable because, we were children when we experienced them, and our nervous system froze us as children in those experiences. So going back and re-experiencing what you felt as, a 5 or a 7-year-old and how much that hurt is difficult. It's very difficult to come across all of that. And the healing wasn't linear. I will have to say, I started back in right before Christmas, I think, of 2021 is when I really started taking my course. I started doing my healing practice. I started, you start with what's called a personal peace procedure, where we had to write out 100 trauma instances or traumatic instances that we've had across our life that we would like to work on. And we were supposed to work through them slowly but surely. Inadvertently, I stumbled upon one that was the biggest, and I had to work on the most. And it was hard because when you really dig in with EFT, because it's a physical practice, like we're directly tapping on our body, or directly engaging our nervous system, our body really registers it at, this primal level. This is where we engage our amygdala, our vagus nerve. We bypass the thinking brain, which is how we actually, are able to process this trauma and able to not react to it again, because our body's processing it out. It could be a very painful process because I'm a migraine sufferer, have been since I was 13. My migraines went from being episodic to chronic after I had my second. And so I spent the majority of my 3 years after he was born in pain of various degrees, still functioning, still trying to take care of the kids in the household, but constantly in pain. So when I just started, my migraines actually ratcheted up for a bit because I was moving some really heavy stuff. I had more migraines. I was more tired. My stomach was hurting more. I was honestly not very functional for about 2 weeks because my body was doing the heavy lifting of bringing up all the hurt and trying to process it. Now, as I started processing it, what I noticed is my migraines became less and less, to the point that I'm back now to them being episodic. So I only have a few a month, or I have some months that are clear, which is amazing. My digestion has gotten better. I started emotionally also started feeling lighter. I started feeling that depression lift out of me. I would, when it came to, I had a really, what you would call a healing crisis in spring, where again, things started getting better, and then they just crashed on me because they hit another really heavy point in my life that I was working on. So again, I felt really down, really sad, felt hopeless, felt like I could never get out of this. And then summer started, and it was the best way I could describe is that somebody just moved the veil from over your eyes, and you're like, oh my God, I see the world. I see all the colors, and not only do I see them, but I can enjoy them. I can come out, and instead of crying uncontrollably for no reason, I am laughing, and I am beaming, and I am filled with this happiness. And I didn't think I could get to that point. And that's sort of what healing started to look like. As summer went on, I started feeling better and better. I'm nowhere near healed. I will be healing for the rest of my life because, new things always come up, and I haven't even cleared out everything from my past. But in general, my mood is more elevated. I have more energy. I feel like a human who's just not depressed all the time, which is, kind of hard. I've been depressed for almost 7 years. So, coming out of that, being relearning what it looks like. And for me, it is completely relearning what it looks like, because for me, motherhood has always been marred by depression. I don't know what motherhood without depression feels like. So I'm kind of taking baby steps in what it feels like, to be a mother without a motherhood ruled by depression and some underlying anxiety and everything that comes out of it.
That's so powerful. For those that are listening, if you could just see Maria, she was just lighting up at that, her success and how much this has helped her and made a difference in her life. And it's really important that we remember that we have to find things that work for us to help us to heal, because it's important for our self-care to find those opportunities to let our body heal. And then that way our mind is healing and our spiritual being is healing. Like it's the whole, like I talk about the mind, body, spirit. Like if you can get that in check and create those things that allow you to take time for yourself, get that Shero cape on and really find what works for you. And EFT has been Maria's thing that's worked for her. And she's created this business now from it. And it's so amazing how she's helping others. And so Maria, I love to know, like you've gone through this process, you've done this healing and you're still working. Like I totally agree with you. We're always healing over something. Trust me. I totally agree with you. And it's like how we handle it, I think is really important. It's one of the things I've taught my kids is like, if you let those things define you and not in a positive way, you can't heal. But if you can say, okay, this is what I'm working through. What's the best way for me to work through it? What do I need? Who I need to talk to? What I need to eliminate out of my life to make that work for me and to heal from it. It's really, really, it's going to help your mental well-being, that success for yourself, and hopefully kind of calm down some anxiety from it. And so you've gone through the process, Maria, and you're working on this healing. And so you've got how old are your kids again?
So my eldest is going to be 7 in a couple of months, and my youngest just turned 4 in November.
Yay! So now you're working on this, and you've gone through the training and everything. So what are you doing? You've created a business around this?
Yeah, I did. So I provide one-on-one coaching to my clients currently with EFT, and I have 2 different packages. I have sort of for people who are unsure about EFT, like I have a shorter, just 1-month package, 4 sessions to try it out, because a lot of milder issues you can absolutely resolve in 4 sessions. And even some of the heavier issues you could resolve in 4 sessions, but 4 sessions is sort of like a minimum of what really works. And then I have another program that's for sort of a deep dive, especially for moms who are really struggling, who maybe have lost themselves in motherhood, who are, struggling, caught in the cycle of postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety. And it's a 3-month program where we, go very deep into all the motherhood issues. We talk about building boundaries. We do self-compassion exercises. We do a lot of other exercises like on call and, as homework. So that's what I'm doing right now. And then this year in the works, I'm planning to put out some, self-study courses and things that people can follow, so that if there's somebody doesn't feel like, they're ready for one-on-one work, there's still something for them to do to help themselves to start that healing journey.
I love all the programs. I think it's great. You have some options for them. So when a mom finds you and she comes to see Maria, what does she expect to receive from you, Maria? Like, what is your approach when you're coaching?
So my approach to coaching is the same as my approach to therapy was always. It's non-judgmental. It's very empathetic. It's individualized. I want to hear your story. I want to know what's going on with you and how you got where you got. I want to know about your childhood, you growing up, because I want to be able to connect the dots for myself and for you. But most importantly for you, because you as the client, you're the one who's doing the healing. I'm just there to sort of shepherd you along and walk with you on the journey. I am not the healer. You are. And that is always how I approach it. I will give you the tools. I will stand there side by side with you. I will offer you support because I offer unlimited, email and messaging support in between my sessions, because I never want anybody to feel like they're going through a crisis and they can't reach the person that they need for help. So I'm always there, always supportive, non-judging, very empathetic. I want to give you what you need, which is usually the mothering. Like the reason why a lot of us moms suffer is we're not getting that mothering. And I am happy to provide that for my clients.
I love that. You're giving them the mother, make them feel, and and the take of that empathetic approach is so great, because and having not being judgmental, it's so important that we have that safe space, like we said earlier, to not be judged, because everybody has a different story and it's your story and you shouldn't be judged for it, because we haven't walked in your shoes, right? And so how can we help you move forward with that is really, really important. And I love that your kids are younger. So my kids are older. So we're like at a different spectrum.
Yeah.
I love also what you said about mothering, because you're right. Like when I grew up and I started having children, again, I didn't have my first ones till in my 40s. I remember that, my mom came and helped me and things like that. We adopted my son in California. My parents lived in California. So I stayed with them for a little bit. But then when I had Nate, my mom was there, but I didn't have that, like that mothering. And it's not my mom's fault. It just wasn't something that she was taught either. It's like, go back there, you go have your kids and off you go. Right. And so in today's world, which I love that, Maria, that you're doing your work you're doing, because we need that. We need, whether you're a mom that's working a lot and now you decide to have a family and you've got to balance that, or you're a mom that's going to be what I call a CEO mom. You're going to stay home with your child and maybe try to add a little bit of work in there. You need to know that you're not alone in feelings that you have. And when Maria, when she works with you, she helps you and meets you with where you're at. And it sounds like, Maria, you're also very empowering to know that it's okay if we didn't have that mother guidance, or we don't have that mothering now, but they can come to Maria and get that mothering. And I think this is amazing what you're doing, Maria.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. And I know it works. I've had that done for myself with my therapist when I was younger, who helped me a lot in that department. I've had that with clients. I've had that even with other students when I was doing EFT, where just a couple of sessions of feeling supported and loved and heard is enough for your nervous system to go, somebody cares. And that's really all we want. We want to know that there's someone out there that cares, that hears us, that sees us in our struggles, and most importantly, sees us behind our struggles, because that's the one part that, I was one of those women who presented with a lot of postpartum rage. Nobody wants to help an angry person. Everybody wants to blame angry people. And we all know there's so many moms that will be labeled as angry, but they're not angry, or the reason that they're angry is because their needs aren't being met. They're burnt out. No one sees what they're doing, and no one's helping. Because guess what? You start helping that mom, you start seeing her as an actual person, that anger dissipates, because she's angry because she is helpless. I mean, some of us, that is when we're helpless in a situation, for some of us, anger is our only power, because we can't reach any higher than that. And so, when we have this right now, a generation of what's considered angry moms, I mean, they're just moms that aren't having their needs met. And, we are feeling safe for talking about it. So like the past generations, where you probably also still had angry moms, but they were quiet about it because they weren't allowed to talk about it. We're actually allowing our moms to speak up and be heard. So yeah, we are having more supposedly angry moms, but that's just because, we're allowed to speak out. And that's part of the reason why I try to talk about it and my story openly on podcasts, or, with my audience too, because I want moms to know that it could feel very scary and you could be very judged when you open up, but just to seeing that there is a mom who's just like you, who is talking about it, openly talking about it, that might just, for one mom out there, make her feel like, I'm not alone. And that's really what this is all about.
So everything you just said is one of the reasons why I started the Shero League, because I was finding, first it started with myself. I was, for so long, was mom. We moved from Virginia to Florida, and I put everybody else before me. And then I was like, who the heck is Pearl? Like, what do I want to do? And then as I started going through my journey and the healing of going, okay, I have goals, I have visions, and I can still do it without guilt. While I work with my kids, I started going, I'm not alone. There's more women, just like what you described, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, sorry, I had a little cough there coming on. So that's why I started the Shero League, because I created the safe space so women can feel empowered, that they can feel radiant, that they feel like they're not alone, and that, they deserve to have that time for themselves without guilt, to whether it's as simple as a bubble bath, or it's sitting on a front swing on my porch like I do, or if it's going for a walk, or maybe you do something like what I'm doing. I kind of I usually call it a staycation, but I didn't stay at home. I'm in Connecticut, like I said, but finding time and space for you to do something for yourself, do something for your self-care, go hang out with some girlfriends, even if you just go to the park for a day or go for a walk around the mall, but don't buy anything, to commit to yourself that you're just going to go for that walk. It's so powerful for our well-being, our self-care. I think it also helps to reduce some of that feeling of being anger, because you're always doing for everybody else. And, I share all the time that I call it a CEO mom, and I don't take credit for that label. My sister-in-law, she inspired me with that label, because I went and visited her and I watched her say, come on, let's go up, and Sean's going to put his clothes away. He's at like 4 or 5 years old. I'm like, put his clothes away? Aren't you doing it? She's like, no, this is a household. And so we went upstairs and we watched Sean put his clothes on the bottom dresser drawer of the dresser. She's like, hey, it's not perfect, but he needs to learn that I'm his mom, but I'm not his maid. I'm not his caretaker. This is a house. We're running a business. So I call it CEO Mom Maria. That's the name I give it. So you could steal it too if you want to. Anybody can steal it. I think it's awesome. But what I want to know now, Maria, so you work with these amazing women, you're helping them. But I want to know, Maria, What do you do for your self-care? How does Maria, with a 4-year-old and 7-year-old at home, how does she make time for herself? And what are some of the things that you do without your children and your husband that you pour back into yourself over?
Yeah, so one of the biggest gifts that I have eventually allowed myself to give is sending kids to preschool as soon as they were eligible, because I had them at home until they were old enough to be sent to preschool. So it was 2.5 for my eldest and 2 with my youngest. He literally went to preschool the next day after his birthday. So he was eligible, off he went. So that was the first thing that I did for myself, was to make sure that I made that space and time to be without really anybody in the house so that I can focus on my goals and what I want. And, actually reacquainting myself after about 4 years of being with kids all the time, being like, well, who am I? What is it that I want? What is it that I like? And so, part of it was, it started out small with a blog. So I was blogging since my eldest was born, pretty much. And that was, sort of an outlet and catharsis, and also educating women about, and sharing my story so that other people didn't feel alone. And then that kept growing into, like, now I wanted to do coaching, and I wanted to expand the business. I wanted to meet more people. So that was sort of the business side. In terms of the fun side, I try to, I make it a point to be outside daily. And that's where the fact that we've been living in Chicago for 1.5 years, and this is our second winter. It is very cold, but even during this, unless it's like completely unsafe to be outside, I take my dog. We go out for at least 15 to 20 minutes a day. In the summer, we go for much longer walks and enjoy the scenery, breathe in the air, and just, soak up all the sun. So for me, outdoor time, sun, essential. And then, I allow myself time to read and learn, because for me, that's a big interest of mine. So I read a lot of different books on, self-development, on mental health. And I've also been allowing myself a little bit time of dabbling into sort of like spiritual practices. I've always been drawn to tarot and astrology and things like that. So I've been kind of learning a little bit more about that and seeing how I can incorporate that into my life to make my life a little bit fuller. And, try to stay in touch with my friends, which has been harder because we're all over the country. So we're not exactly in the same space, but we try to, talk and, schedule sort of like little talk dates and things like that, so that we still feel connected and not alone. And then now the kids are in school, also using that as making new friends through my kids. My kids are very social, so they make a lot of friends. And I'm like, okay, well, let's see who their parents are, make some more friends. The more the merrier. So yeah, that's kind of a lot of the stuff that I do for myself to make myself feel, human, to feed my soul, feed my intellect, and to make sure that I feel good.
I love that. I love you getting outside in the cold. And I mean, I remember living in Virginia. It's like you had to force yourself to get out in the cold because it could get really, really cold, right? And
it is.
Awesome.
I mean, I put on like ski gear, like legit ski gear. I have like a ski jacket that's meant for, I don't know, minus what kind of degrees. And then, the ski overalls, heavy boots. And I'm like, okay, I'm trudging through this.
So where are you originally from, Maria?
So originally I'm from Ukraine, but I grew up in San Francisco. I immigrated when I was 12. So I've lived in pretty warm weather, and then we lived for 8 years in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is also warm weather. And then the last year, almost 2 years, we've been in Chicago, which has been very different and the coldest place I've ever lived.
Well, I don't know if you have family in Ukraine, but we've been praying in my family for your country. So, just want you to know that from here. And so, okay, so Maria has shared what she does for herself, but oftentimes I have clients who with children, they go, well, I feel so guilty if I go do something for myself. And, what if they think I'm being selfish? What if they think I don't love them? So Maria, I'm going to ask you this question. Since your kids are younger, what does Maria do with her children that she incorporates them for her self-care?
Yeah, so I totally feel that feeling, because I struggled with that for the longest time, like especially when they were younger and they were at home with me before preschool. I felt like I had to be present for every little moment of their time. And here's what I found out. Quantity of time does not create quality. In fact, it actually created the opposite, because I was being burned out. I was being angry at them. I would, snap at them for things that were completely normal, simply because I wasn't enjoying what we were doing. I wasn't enjoying having so much time with them and not having any times where I could, be by myself. So I sort of ended up having a mindset shift of like, well, it's quality over quantity. So if, for example, I'm having a day or a couple of days where, maybe I'm feeling a little more spent and I need more alone time because I'm more introverted. I do enjoy my alone time. That's how I recharge. So for me, having my dog next to me cuddled up is the best thing. And my kids are very extroverted, very loud. They're both boys. They play off of each other. It's just like chaos. If you think, Pearl, you'll probably know with boys being 2 years apart when they're young, very loud, so much energy. Like I can't keep up with that. So I've been teaching them that, there is, personal time and personal space. We all need it and we need to cultivate it. So even though right now they don't feel like they need it, they genuinely do, because when I see that they're starting to get at it with each other, I tell them to separate and each person goes into their room, plays with their own stuff with the door closed. And that's healthy. That's good. You don't need your child being with you all the time. You need to be teaching them all the time because they need time to absorb. So when they're by themselves, they're actually absorbing everything you taught them. So part of it is, you need to work on the guilt. And the EFT helped me get rid of the last bits of that guilt. And I was working on it even before. When you release that guilt and you realize that your children need time away from you as well, you kind of understand that you can create those pockets of self-care. We do media in our home, but we moderate it. And so in some ways, when we want some free time, here you go. Here's your half an hour to an hour of chosen media time. It's a treat for them and it's free time for us. And then, we talk about it and, when they need us, we're available. If it's an emergency, of course, I'm going to break whatever self-care I'm doing and I'm going to be there. But if that's not an emergency, we are teaching them boundaries. And so, I have taught my kids to be very independent players, even though my eldest definitely does not gravitate to that normally. He's quite anxious. He really wants to be with someone, especially with me. Our youngest has always been more independent, so it's been a little bit easier with him. But I've cultivated that with them. And so I don't have this issue where, like, if we're all at home, then they're on me 24/7. They go off and play with each other. They go off, build their own things. They have their own worlds. And I encourage that. And I always tell them how proud I am of that. And then, at the end of the day, I check in with them and I check in on their interests. But because I have that time to myself and I spend it without guilt, when I actually check in with them, I'm interested in hearing what they're saying. I am 100% present. Actually, I was watching a presentation recently of other mom entrepreneurs, and somebody said something that I have been embodying for a while, is that if you imagine your time is, you have 100% of the time, that's your day. So when I am away from my children, let's say it's 70% of the time because they're right now, working and they're in extended care, so they're gone for 70% of the time. I'm 100% concentrated on myself, on my business, on whatever I need to be doing for myself. Now that 30% of the time when they are home, I am 100% on them, right? That means that I am there when they need me. I play with them. I'm present. At the same time, since I work from home, I have more flexibility. It's not quite the same as somebody who's working in an office. For somebody who's, let's say, working in an office and then comes home and has to spend time with the children, I highly recommend that, maybe that 30% of the time becomes 25% of the time or 20% of the time. And you spend that 10% of the time wholeheartedly, 100% on yourself. And the other 20% goes wholeheartedly to your kids. You don't worry about the dishes. You don't worry about whatever. You're spending the time with them. And always remembering it's the quality that you spent with them, not the quantity.
Wow. Okay. So I hope everybody took lots of great notes there, because that's, first of all, what Maria is sharing is that and we say this often, our kids learn, like, I think it's like that up to 7 years of age or 8 years of age from our example. And so Maria is encouraging and setting the example of saying, okay, boys, you play together, but also I need to teach you to have your space. I need to teach you to have your independently play time, quiet time, whatever you might want to call it. And then her and her husband have also created the space of saying, okay, we're going to want me time. The kids want media. And, I love Maria that she is sharing and limiting media, because you guys, we didn't have the media like what's out here now when my kids were younger, and we limited them even way back then. I mean, we had Nintendo when my kids came out and Xbox. Now they get all this crazy stuff. But I love, Maria, that you're sharing, like, creating the space for media and limiting it, and then creating when, is so those moms that I've worked with and are listening, when you say, how do I have self-care when I have children? She just gave the prime example. if you're going to give your children media time or whatever that time is you want to give them, you create that time to incorporate with you and your self-care. So if, like Maria was saying, her and her husband want some time together, then she knows and that the kids, it's their media time, then that you can make that work and balance it out. And that's how you balance it. That's how you set those boundaries. And those of you that I know are listening right now are probably going, oh, that's just babysitting time. Foo-foo on you. It's not. It's creating a time and space for your self-care, because oftentimes we as moms do not do things to put ourselves first. And when you can take the examples Maria just gave you and say, okay, I've got my kids, I need to create that space, you can do that. But you can also do something as simple as sitting on the couch. And I used to do this, sitting on the couch and watching an episode. Back in my day, it was Barney. So whatever show your kids watch today, sit down and, sit and enjoy that with them. Enjoy a movie with your spouse, whatever that is. That's another way to create your safe space of your self-care. And it doesn't mean you have to go out and spend money. Like Maria just gave you great examples of, teaching the kids independence, recognizing when her children need to be separated and realize that, hey, this is not a great time for them to be together because they're kind of doing that pounding, feeding off each other. And yeah, my kids were younger and I used to see that too. My oldest we had to take Lion King away from him, Maria. That's when Lion King came out. We had to take the movie away because he would act out that movie all over the house. He would jump from couch to couch, think he was climbing mountains, and the whole thing. Where Nate was independent, quiet, as he got older, could build computers. So I love that you gave that example because Maria, oftentimes that's what I hear from women is that I don't know how to do it. I don't have time. I have to do it with the kids. You just gave them prime examples without even walking out of the house. And I love what you said too about who gives a crap about the dishes in the sink, the laundry to be done. If it means you can spend time with your children or your spouse, whoever that is in your world, then do it. Because Maria, we can all agree it's going to be there tomorrow. It's still going to be there. And, if you follow my podcast, everybody that's listening, you've heard me say, you're not promised tomorrow. So what are you doing today to be closer to God, be closer to yourself, and make sure you're incorporating your dreams and visions while you're balancing your time and your family? And I just love those examples you gave, Maria. And so, Maria, when you are doing that self-care and you're talking to women, do you find the same thing? Do you find often that complaint?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was the reason why I talked about guilt, because the primary thing sitting under there is guilt and shame. Because the thing is, most of us, I'm what we consider an elder millennial. So, my mom was at the beginning of the Xer generation, and my husband's parents are a little bit older, so they're like at the tail end of the baby boomer generation. And the one thing that I've noticed in both of them, and I've noticed in a lot of women in that generation, is that they didn't know how to do self-care because that was never modeled, and that was not okay. You weren't safe to do that. You weren't allowed to do that. And so, being a daughter of a mom who didn't model self-care, I had to come up with it myself. And that also means that I carried a lot of the guilt and the shame that was passed on to her that she inadvertently passed on to me, because that's what she knew, that you're not allowed to take care of yourself. You're not allowed downtime. When you're a wife and a mom, you're running circles and you're taking care of everybody. And, your husband is basically another baby to take care of. And, it's all you, but there's no actual time for you. It's you're servicing everybody else. And I, even as a little kid, never really jived with that idea. I was like, I don't buy it. And I thought that I would come into motherhood and being like, yeah, I'm gonna, immediately delegate everything. My husband and I are gonna split everything evenly. And you know what happened? With that depression came in all of those things that I heard growing up. All of that programming came out. And I became the primary caregiver. I cared about dishes more than about resting. I all of a sudden started caring about the house being super clean and all these things that before never really even crossed my mind, where I'd be like, oh, dishes in the sink, whatever, we're going out to have drinks. I don't care. For some reason, the moment I became a mom, all of it just came out flooding, right? And so it took me time also to get rid of that guilt and to start reprogramming my brain into being like, no, I can't keep living like this. I don't have girls to model this to, but I do have boys who I want to see that, mom is not your, maid, is not your slave. She's not meant to be doing everything for you. So that in hopes is that if they have, female partners when they grow up, that they will, help them and cheer in with them and be equal partners and not be the ones who are like, oh, okay, well, she's got it all. Why do I need to be doing this? So yeah, I think whether you have boys or girls, it's important for us moms to be showing that, because the previous generations, for the most part, weren't able to show this to us because they weren't given the space and the safety to do that. So we're kind of passing on the torch and, having to show that to our kids. And that's why it's really important to do that. It's really important to get rid of that guilt and shame piece.
And I love that you brought that up too about, we need to teach our boys that, because that's something I taught my children, and my oldest ones still struggle. I'm like, no, you have to, it's not like, oh, she's the wife, she's the mom, she takes care of all that. No, I mean, my husband and I, from like day one, he would do laundry, I would fold laundry. I put the dishes in the dishwasher, he put them away. We just had this partnership, and that's really what it is. Relationships, marriages, whatever you're in, it's a partnership, and your partner shouldn't be responsible for doing everything else. And especially like I worked out of the house. I was a top 5 mortgage broker. I worked many long hours in a week sometimes. And it's like, if I had to come home and do all that, I would be like, I'm out, check me out. I can't do this. And that's what happens. That's what leads to the emotional breakdown, the anger, and all those things that happen. And, having that space. And so if you are a mom of a boy listening right now, create that space, show them by example. Moms, go out and take time for yourself. Let your boys, and tell them what you're doing. Mom's going out. And, I remember when I first really started doing something for myself, I didn't really go out. I would spend like 8 o'clock at night to tell my boys, okay, I'm going in my room. I'm shutting my door. Unless somebody has to go to the hospital, do not come bother me, because I need to create that space. And then it became more of things that I learned to do better. But, I started teaching my boys that. And even like cleaning house. Like I have a program that we have French children that come over every summer, and I place them around Tampa where I live. And so they would come, and I was like, okay, Wednesday, because their goal is to be immersed in how we live here in the US. And I'm like, I taught my boys, especially over the summer, Wednesday is cleaning day at the house. They all had responsibilities so that Saturday and Sunday we can enjoy the weekend together and not have to be like, oh, I've worked all day and now I got to clean a house. Right. And so I love, Maria, that you're setting that up for your children. And then even for the girls, the moms of girls, set the example that they don't have to be expected. Because like Maria said, that's all our parents knew, was that was our role. You're the wife. You're supposed to do X, Y, Z. But no, we're not in that world anymore. We have a lot of parent working families now, and it's a lot to balance, and it shouldn't be on one person's shoulder. So Maria, we've had great conversations. This has been so much fun. I know we're coming up to near the end of our show. So Maria, I would love for you to share how does somebody get in touch with you? Where do they reach out to? And I know you had something you want to offer the listeners, so share that with us.
Yeah, so you can find me. I have a website. It's parentonboard.com. So you can check me out there. I also have an Instagram and a TikTok and Facebook, all at Parent on Board Coaching. That's the handle on any of the platforms. And as I mentioned before, I do one-on-one coaching, currently offer a 1-month package and a 3-month package. And I'm going to be working on creating classes so that you could do those in your own time. And I do have a freebie vault on my website. I mean, it doesn't cost you anything except your email address. And then you get access to a lot of goodies that I have put together at the blog over the years that I've had it. There's some stuff for kids. There's some stuff for you as a parent. I have a EBook on EFT there where I basically explain it in more detail as to what it is, how it can benefit moms. And I even have a practice there that I've shared. So I would love for you to sign up and check it out. I don't send spam. I don't even always send emails weekly, so you don't have to worry about me flooding your inbox. That is not my style. So yeah, I would love to connect to you like that. And if you want to actually just chat with me, Facebook Messenger is great. Through Parent on Board Coaching, I have Messenger on my phone, so I'm pretty quick to respond. So if you have any questions you want to just ask and chat, you can find me there.
That's awesome, Maria. I want to ask you, so do you do virtual and in-person coaching?
Just all virtual. I haven't done any in person. person because I don't need to be in the same room with the person since they're basically following what I'm doing. So I work with people, all over the US. I've had some in Canada. I work with people in Australia, which is, it's amazing now having this virtual world.
It's this whole new world. I mean, that's one of the things that came out of COVID is this opportunity to reach people and do things like what you and I are doing here today. Yeah. And I've been so excited to have you on the show today. I think it's really powerful, your story and your message. And, those that are listening, I just want to remind you, everything you heard Maria share today is exactly why we have the Shero League. And the Shero League is a group of women who are coming together every Sunday evening from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern time. And we're on Zoom. You can have a glass of wine with you. You can have a bottle of tea with you like I do here. You can show up in your PJs, makeup or no makeup. We don't care. It's non-judgmental. It's not recorded. It's kind of the old saying, what happens in the Shero League stays in the Shero League. And we talk about a lot of things that Maria talked today about as a mom. How do you balance out self-care? How do you recognize that maybe you need more help than just, journaling? You might need to go talk to a professional about depression, anxiety, those kind of things. We talk about health and wellness. We talk about what brings us joy in our lives. And then we talk about those things that we're struggling with in our lives. And we do that in the Shero League. And it's just an amazing group of women from all over the country, all different ethnic backgrounds. And so if you're listening to this and you want to learn more on how to do that, you can always email me at pearl@wsliving.com. That's pearl@wsliving.com. You can just put in the title Shero information, and I'd love to share that with you. But I just am so excited, Maria, that you were with us today. I'm glad we got to spend this time together. And remember, to our listeners, I'm in Connecticut, so I don't have the oyster with me, but you come into this world and you are this little rough shell on the outside. But as you open it up, you go and you find your inner pearl to greatness. And I want you to go out today and I want you to be the Shero that you are because you deserve it. And we love you. Have a great day. Hi, my name is Pearl Sharenza, and I'm with Women Successful Living. And I want to tell you a little story. You see, once upon a time in the middle of COVID, I noticed that more and more women were overwhelmed. We were having to balance households. We're having to become teachers. We're having to work our job while we're trying to become a teacher. We were sitting in our home with our children and our spouses or our loved ones and feeling overwhelmed. We were lost for where we're going to find space in our own house. So I was feeling that this overwhelm was stressing women out more, that they felt like they could not have a Calgon take me away moment. They felt like everywhere they turned, somebody in the house would find them, or their job wanted them on another Zoom meeting. And I just felt so sorry for these women as I spoke with them and felt the pain because I too was feeling sorry. I was feeling sorry that I couldn't go out and do the things I love to do. I could go out, yes, and take a walk and sit on my front swing, but I couldn't go to the community meetings and the fundraiser functions or go have lunch with a friend or go to the movies with my husband or just take a moment away from everything that we're responsible for as moms and wives in our homes, right? You become that CEO mom and you're running a household. But then if you're working outside of the household, not only are you a CEO mom, and if you're asking what a CEO mom is, that's a mom who is running the household. Because let me tell you, you're not sitting around eating bonbons every day. You truly are running a business of a home. But then maybe you also work outside of the home. And here you are, you're trying to balance working in the home, working outside the home. And then maybe you have children and you're having to learn how to become a teacher because bless our teachers, they're trying to learn a whole new way of teaching through Zoom. And so as I spoke to the women in my community and my clients, I found they were also feeling all this overwhelm. They were becoming stressed. They were sitting in the home with all their children and their spouse, and they're going, I'm with you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I love you, but I don't love you that much. Were you feeling that way too? So I found as they were feeling this way that I had to do something. And every day, about a month after into the pandemic, I decided to try something new. I decided to create a space where we could meet via Zoom. And yes, I know another Zoom meeting, really, Pearl? But I just knew that was the only way that we could get together. And the rule was you had to go in a room where you could put a note in the door and say, I'm on a break. I'm on a timeout. Whatever you want to call it, you could make that note on your door. Because really, we have to take time for ourselves in order to really take time and care for our family, our loved ones, and our job the way we know we want to and we need to. So what I did is I created what we called our self-care Sunday evening. And it actually became Shero's is what we ended up naming it, because we as women, we are the hero of the house. We're the hero of everything we do for our family, our friends, our job, whatever that is that you're responsible for, right? But are you really the hero for yourself? So that became important to me. So one day I decided I want to pour into these women. So I brought them together on a Zoom meeting. We met Sunday evening, 8 p.m. We finished up by 9 p.m. We just had conversations. What was challenging them? What was the pandemic bringing up for them? How were they doing mentally? Were they doing something to take care of themselves? And if you heard me before, I say bathtubs and taking baths are not self-care, but really during the pandemic, sometimes that's all you could do was get in a tub with bubbles and take a few minutes for yourself, right? So as we poured into them, I noticed that they were starting to enjoy the self-care. They were starting to be less stressed. They were starting to communicate better with their family and their loved ones because they could communicate why they were taking time for themselves. They were able to communicate that it's not that I don't love being with you. It's that because I love you so much, I need time for myself. So on Sunday evenings, we worked on things about self-care challenges. We created a challenge of self-care where every day they had to do something. It could be something that took them 1 minute, or if they wanted to, it could be something that took them an hour. But it was their job to do something for themselves every single day. And then because of that, they saw that their family, they were worried that their family might make them feel guilty. So we started incorporating ways that they could do self-care for ourselves as we also did something with our family, right? So in some cases, we found that we had moms sitting and just watching TV, silly cartoons with their children. That's self-care, right? Or maybe playing a puzzle game or putting a puzzle together. And then when it came to their spouses, we found that they were sitting and finding movies on Netflix or playing cards, or even we gave them a challenge. We have a friend that has these great cards. They're called Better Questions, Better Life. We even would pull a card and have a discussion with our loved one around that card. And then as they were working from home, some of our professional women were finding that their jobs were having much more demand on them, that because they were home, they could actually kind of have more time they could grab for them. Oh, well, you're home all day long, so you really don't need to take a break. So they started finding that some of their jobs and their bosses were expecting them to give more. So we talked about how to set boundaries around our schedules. We talked about how to set boundaries around how much we want to be on Zoom. And as we did that, we found that the women were less stressed and they were actually performing their job performance better. They were having better and more improved relationships with their loved one, with their children. And some of them also had family that were in nursing homes. So we were creative on how to spend that time with their loved ones, but also making sure that they were taking care of themselves. So as we did this, I saw that it was a need that needed to continue. So even though the pandemic is, as we know it today, is over, I found that the women loved this so much, we needed to continue this. And who knew that 3 years ago when I started this, that it would grow into what we have today, this amazing community of women that we still meet every Sunday evening from 8 to 9 p.m. We talk about things that bring us joy. We talk about challenges we're having in our lives. We're talking about things we're having to overcome. We have some women that are struggling in their marriages. We're talking about how we pour into them and how to help them work through communication. We have amazing, amazing guest speakers that come in every month. We've had Jane Pilger come in and talk up to us about our mind and the neurological part of our mind when it comes to our eating and our health and sugar and how it affects our body. We've had Seth Santora come in and talk to us about the smile method and how we have things such as just the smile within us that can make things like mock acceptance, where we're accepting things because we think we have to accept them. Like, for instance, my loss of my son, Matthew. I never knew that when I created this group 3 years ago, almost now, how much I needed these women. And because I have this community of women around me, I met Seth, and Seth taught me about mock acceptance. And he taught me that, yes, I was accepting the loss of my son, but I wasn't truly believing that he was lost. And I was sort of like going through the motions. So ever since I have put this group together, this community of women, we have watched the women flourish. We have watched them have less stress. We've watched them communicate better with their loved ones. We've watched them put boundaries around their self-care so that they can achieve the things they want to, so that they can put their cape on first as they pour into their family even better. And ever since we've started this self-care Shero group, it has grown where we now at our retreats, we have women joining us during our retreats. We meet every year. We have a retreat in September. It's a pajama retreat. You come in your PJs, no makeup. You have about 4 days at the beach, sometimes the mountains, depending on the year. We just have sessions and breakout groups on how do we improve on our self-care? How do we continue to communicate our needs to our loved ones? How do we find what our goals are and our visions are, and how do we bring those to fruition? Because how many of you ever sat back and said, I have this big goal and I really want to do it, but nobody believes I can do it. I want you to know that we believe in you and we know that you can do it. And so if this is something that you want to learn more about and come and enjoy a great way to end your week and begin your week, I would love for you to join us, because on top of our speakers, we also have an amazing meditation coach where she empowers us to sit down and just take some quiet time for ourselves and just be in our own space as we reflect on what we truly want within. And I am so honored to watch the progress and the growth that the women in this community have accomplished. And I cannot wait to see what's coming up for all of them and hopefully for you. And if this is something you would love to learn more about, I would love to invite you to come and visit us one Sunday evening. Like I said, it's a great way to end your week and a great way to start your week. What better to know that you've got a balcony of people sitting and waiting for you to join them, have a cup of tea maybe, and just do some laughing, maybe a little crying, but no matter what, know that you've got a girlfriend there to have your back. So if you're ready to check out the Shero League, I would love for you to join us. All you have to do is email me at pearl@wsliving.com. That's pearl@wsliving.com, and I would love to connect you. I hope today you know that we've all come into this world. We're a little oyster. We might be a little rough on the outside, but on the inside, you have a pearl. And I hope you find your pearl to greatness today as you become the Shero I know you are. My name is Pearl Sharenza. Do you know what your score is for your self-care? Find out today. Go to pearlssurvey.com. That's pearlssurvey.com and see what your score is today.